Mr Pearce. Mr Pearce will be stepping out and replaced at the front desk by Dr Carolyn Crozer-Barlow, who's the Executive Director of the Education Department for Early Years and Child Development. The officers behind me remain Ben Templey, Chris Bernardi and Dr Peter Smith. Julianne Rienstra remains not here in person, but I am pleased to inform the committee that she's advised me by SMS that she is watching. And so to Julianne and all of the other many people watching through the Parliament's web streaming service, we thank you for your interest. Julianne tells me she is going to be printing out the Hansard that I offered and the member for Wright offered earlier today.
I'm sure we can organise a signed copy. Given we are shifting to a new portfolio area, that being early years and childhood development, again, the Minister appearing is the Minister for Education. The estimate of payments, as referred to earlier, and I advise that given these proposed payments remain open, there are no opening statements in that regard. Member for Chafee, despite the quality of your question, I will give the first question to the opposition, the member for Wright.
Chair. Minister, Budget Paper 4, Volume 1, page 184. Have the new arrangements for family daycare come into effect now? No. Same budget line, Chair. When will they come into effect?
Let's see what detail I have. So this was a project where industry consultation was undertaken in October 2019, but it was paused due to COVID during 2020. And then there was some work done after, I don't know whether it was before or after our discussion and estimates last year, but it was at some stage after the pause at any rate, where PricewaterhouseCoopers retested the market to identify if COVID-19 had had an adverse impact that would compromise the successful transfer of services. And they've advised that there is still some level of interest within the market that we could proceed. So the department's reviewed the project's delivery timelines and requirements. And if it's to proceed, it would be expected that that would happen towards, the end of 2022.
Thank you, Minister. Same budget line, Chair. Sorry, and if I missed this in your answer, my apologies. Has a new manager or operator of the family daycare and respite care services been chosen yet? I understand that the policy is not underway, but has that?
No.
Thank you, Chair. On that topic again, Minister, despite the pause that we have had that you spoke about for COVID, is it still planned that these changes will go ahead at some point? How permanent or impermanent is the pause?
I think that, as I described last year, the purpose of the proposal is to ensure that we have high-quality outcomes for children and young people. And so, obviously, the determining factor ultimately in whether it goes ahead is if the government is convinced that the potential service to be offered by a non-government provider is actually going to enable innovation and the opportunity for these taxpayer dollars to be spent, and family dollars, obviously, they make a contribution in a way that will improve services. So we're not there yet.
So am I right in taking from your answer, Minister, that there is a chance that this will not proceed? There's a chance it will, but it's not a certainty that it will go ahead.
We're still within the same parameters that we have been since the start of the project. It's just that there's been a significant delay in the time frame, which has been precipitated by COVID as much as anything else.
Thank you, Minister. On to the early learning strategy, which came out of this budget. How much funding in total makes up that strategy? What was the total bucket that was announced along with the strategy?
Strategy over the forward estimates, and then I think there's ongoing funding of new funding beyond that of $16 million a year. $16.7 million a year indexed in terms of new funding to the department, but obviously there was also already some funding available to the department within which we've been able to provide some of the work. So I wouldn't want to limit the amount that will be spent on the projects within the early learning strategy to just that $16.7 million a year ongoing. It's a significant investment. It's an investment I'm very excited about.
The answer to the question for the member for Chafee, so I may quickly ask him to repeat his question for the Minister.
Thank you. I'm well versed at it now. Refer to Budget Paper 4, Volume 1, page 178. Minister, would you please update the committee on how measures in the budget will support preschools across the state, as well as in my electorate of Chafee?
Well, I think that preschools and, of course, other learning providers will benefit across the state. They'll benefit in the member for Chafee's electorate. We will see benefits to our preschools and our children's early learning outcomes significantly. We want, in all communities, early years providers to work together to engage and support families seamlessly so that every child has the best start in life. To support this, part of the project is that there'll be a new office for the early years within the Department for Education to be established. It will lead a universal early years system. The office will provide strategic direction to a range of agencies across the state government and non-government sectors, and where appropriate, it will also commission new services. The early learning strategy will enable responsive local programs and services that support community priorities. The government will be supporting communities to access Australian Early Development Census data, which provides population-level data to enable local communities to undertake more informed and targeted support for children and their developmental needs, and will be providing tools and resources to support those responses. We're also looking at opportunities to work with the Child Development Council, local government and other partners to deliver and design local-based services. There are opportunities for us to work with the LGA in helping to provide grants for some of those services. We're also looking to provide grants to the Raising Literacy Australia and Playgroups SA, because of course one of the things that we're very keen on ensuring as part of this strategy is that playgroups are a very important part of the outcome. We know that in some areas we have an excellent provision of playgroups, many of them through preschools, such as in the member for Chafee's electorate. But of course there are also some areas that are not sufficiently served by the opportunity for playgroups, and playgroups have a massive impact in the opportunity for parents to build confidence as well as developing the socialisation of their children. I'm very confident that when we see the diminishment in well-being according to vulnerability checks as part of the AEDC data in South Australian young children that we've seen from 2009 to 2018, against the national trend, I should say, part of that diminution, I've no doubt, is because we actually have, we believe, fewer playgroups now than we did 15 years ago. That's something that this government is eager to turn around and will provide some extra resources to Playgroups SA to help establish a map of that and understand where we can support new playgroups to be established. We're also, in relation to preschools in particular, we're committed to delivering a world-class early learning system that's tailored to the need of South Australian children and their families. We know that our preschools are already at a very high level here in South Australia. 77% of our South Australian preschools exceed the national quality standards for education and care. And of course, we'd like it to be 100%, but I can promise you that these rigorous standards have 77% achieving that is at a very high level by any comparison with any other jurisdiction or sector. As part of the consultation during the early learning strategy, we heard that preschool leaders and teachers are looking for consistent, evidence-informed leadership and support specifically for early childhood as a distinct specialisation within education. So the strategy will build on this with a focus on key areas of education program and practice, relationships with children and leadership. Research shows that the highest indicator of outcomes in early childhood is the quality of educator interactions, and in terms of the ways that we can have those interactions in preschool, and we'll provide more support for this with additional resources and guidance. We'll be developing a position statement on preschool in South Australia, and a practice evaluation tools will be implemented to support shared understanding of practice. And a couple of specific measures also in relation to preschool. As a result of feedback received during the development of the strategy, we're making significant new investments in the early years, for preschools particularly, including a dedicated leadership position in the Department for Early Childhood Education to provide system level for oversight and support for preschool professional practice through the department, including corporate, local education teams and sites. Also a new team to co-design and develop prior to schooling teaching and learning resources, focusing on the how and the what is taught in preschool education programs. And also the Preschool Directors Association was obviously very pleased to hear we're providing increased funding to that association to enable the employment of a full-time president. And I'm very confident that this work will contribute to South Australia continuing to be recognised as a leader in child development and early education, but in a way that will see even better outcomes for our children and young people.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. If I could go to page 184 of Budget Paper 4 again, and I think this is a topic that we discussed in last year's estimates as well, about the need for a new early learning centre in Kingston. And I know they've been very keen to see some kind of announcement and investment from government there. I didn't see anything in the budget. Is there anything planned to help provide more places there?
So in relation to Kingston, and I want to thank the member for MacKillop who brought the working group from Kingston to Parliament House recently to meet with me, and included staff from council as well as educators and a number of parents. That Kingston working group has been collaborating with the local council with the aim of establishing a childcare facility on the Kingston Community School site. I understand the council has applied for capital works funding from the Australian government, and the department will be providing a grant to the council, which they were very pleased to hear about, and the working group were very pleased to hear about, to assist with the engagement of a specialist childcare consultant to develop a business case. Funding for childcare centres tends to come from a combination of Commonwealth Government and family resources, and indeed whether we're talking about a community childcare centre or a private provider, so long as there are a sufficient number of children seeking to access it, there's no question that I think the number of children at Kingston, there is definitely a sustainable business model that we believe would be able to be delivered. The capital for these is usually provided by a private provider or a community or a council, and sometimes supplemented by the federal government, and that's certainly the pathway that is being undertaken by the group in Kingston. And it mirrors very much what happened in Pandana in recent times, where the department similarly, the Marshall government provided a grant to a consultant who was able to work with that community to develop a business case. And that community developed that business case, was satisfied with it, applied to the federal government for funding to build the infrastructure that would be required, and that project was successful in attracting that federal government funding, I think $1.8 million from the Commonwealth's bushfire recovery package, and the Pandana Childcare Management Committee is now working closely with the local recovery coordinator and the department on what the next steps are there required to establish the service. The department's role there is that we're providing the land on which the centre can be developed. It's going to be developed on the school site, and hopefully that's something that can be replicated to positive effect at Kingston. There is an existing rural care service at Kingston that's been provided. It's got the highest level of support that we provide in any of those rural care services, with a 3-worker model at the moment, but there's still significant demand in that community.
Thank you, Chair. And staying on page 184, Minister, I see that after some growth in preschool enrolments and attendance between 2019-20 and 2020-21, that we are forecasting a decrease in both enrolments and attendance there of about 500. What do we put that down to? Has any work been done to work out why we've seen that drop?
I'm advised that's a function of population drop for that cohort in that year. Sometimes some years have higher birth rates, some have lower, and this happens to be a year that had a lower birth rate, as I understand.
Thank you, Chair. And keeping on the same topic of preschool, and there's obviously a lot of talk nationally now about a move to including 3-year-olds in preschool. What work are you and the agency doing to look at that or consider that?
I think that in relation to 3-year-olds in preschool, I have spoken about this previously, and I don't think that it's right to say that it's getting as much interest nationally as it did a few years ago, when it was a very hot topic of conversation. I think that it's been understood that there is a cohort of students who are 3 years old, a cohort of 3-year-old children for whom preschool is extremely beneficial and really adds to their development. We're talking about largely vulnerable children, and those 3-year-olds who are Aboriginal children and children under the guardianship in South Australia are already eligible for preschool at the age of 3. I am interested, and the department is exploring whether there are other cohorts that would benefit in addition to those 2 significant cohorts who are already able to access preschool at the age of 3. But certainly it was one of the factors that was considered as the department was undertaking research and consultation in relation to the early learning strategy, when we were confident that there was the opportunity to provide extra resources to support children prior to the year before they go into school, so prior to 4 years old. We were looking at what would be effective, and we are very confident that the $50 million worth of measures that we've identified will have a better outcome for our children's well-being and the outcomes for children and young people entering school than moving a 3-year-old preschool. I think that we have got a very high-quality program that will have a very significant impact on outcomes for children and young people. There's a range of estimates of the costs of what universal 3-year-old preschool would be in South Australia, depending on the delivery model and the hours funded, for example, whether you fund 12 or 15 hours per week. But the department's given me a working assumption that the cost would be about $100 million per year to have universal access for 3-year-olds in preschool, not to mention the very significant capital cost required to build the extra places and an enormous amount of places that 3-year-olds might need to then have access to a specified preschool program. It's also worth saying that the National Quality Framework requirements on long daycare services, where most of the 3-year-olds are currently spending their time who aren't captured by the current provision of a preschool service for Aboriginal children or guardianship children, are also meaning that over the last decade, those early childhood services and long daycare services now have teachers on site and much higher levels of people with diploma qualifications. The work that's done in our long daycare settings by our early childhood educators, who do so much more than care, is very substantial. And I think that some of the arguments that I've heard in the past used to justify a potential expenditure of 3-year-old preschool, I think are also, you need to take into account the significant work that's done in the education development of children by those early childhood educators in long daycare services. Obviously, for those particularly vulnerable cohorts, and there are often cohorts in guardianship or Aboriginal children who might not be accessing those high-quality long daycare services, there's a real benefit to them getting access to preschool at the age of 3. And they've got that under the current settings. There were settings put in place some years ago, and we have warmly embraced them and continue with them. And as I say, we're exploring the cost-benefit of whether there are other cohorts that would similarly benefit from it in terms of their outcomes.
Thank you, Minister. Same budget line and same topic, and in your answer you said that it's the government's estimate that it would cost somewhere in the vicinity of $100 million per year for 3-year-old preschools. You mentioned that there would be a capital cost on top of that, which I completely accept. Has any modelling been done by the agency about what kind of capital costs there might be in addition to the ongoing $100 million per year?
I'm advised that hasn't taken place recently. I recall a conversation with Julianne Riedster, who will send me an SMS, I'm sure, to correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that she and a former executive director did some more informal modelling that put it into a very, very high number indeed. That I remember a discussion about it a couple of years ago, but I wouldn't want to put a number into their mouths when they're not here to correct me.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. I was going to hand over to the member for Badcoe to read the omnibus questions for this session, if that's all right.
Certainly.
A true privilege again, sir. The questions are: 1. For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what is the actual FTE count at 30th of June 2021 and the projected actual FTE count for each year of the forward estimates? What is the total employment cost for each year of the forward estimates? What is the notional FTE job reduction target that has been agreed with Treasury for each year of the forward estimates? And does the agency or department expect to meet the target in each year of the forward estimates? How many TVSPs are estimated to be required to meet FTE reductions over the forward estimates? Question 2. For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how much is budgeted to be spent on goods and services for 21-22 and for each of the years of the forward estimates period? The top 10 providers of goods and services by value to each agency reporting to the Minister for 2021, and a description of the goods and or services provided by each of these top 10 providers and the cost to the agency for these goods and or services. The value of the goods and services that was supplied to the agency by South Australian suppliers. Question 3. Between 1 July 2020 and 30 June 2021, will the Minister list the job title and total employment cost of each position with a total estimated cost of $100,000 or more, which has either 1, been abolished, or 2, which has been created? Question 4. Will the Minister provide a detailed breakdown of expenditure on consultants and contractors above $10,000 between 1 July 2020 and 30 June 2021 for all the departments and agencies reporting to the Minister, listing the name of the consultant, contractor or service supplier, the cost, work undertaken, reason for engaging the contractor and method of appointment? Question 5. For each department and agency for which the Minister has responsibility, how many FTEs were employed to provide communication and promotion activities in 2021, and that is the year 2020 to 21, and what was their employment expense? How many FTEs are budgeted to provide communication and promotion activities in 2021-22, 22-23, 23-24, 24-25, and what is their estimated employment expense? The total cost of government-paid advertising, including campaigns across all mediums in 2020-21, and budgeted cost for 21-22. For each department, this is question 6, and agency reporting to the Minister, please provide a full itemised breakdown of attraction and retention allowances as well as non-salary benefits paid to public servants and contractors between 1 July 2020 and 30 June 2021. Question 7, sir. What is the title and total employment cost of each individual staff member in the Minister's office as at 30 June 2021, including all departmental employees seconded to ministerial offices? For each department and agency, this is question 8, reporting to the Minister, could you detail A, how much was spent on targeted voluntary separation packages in 2020-21, B, what department funded these TVSPs, C, what number of TVSPs were funded, D, what is the budget for targeted voluntary separation packages for financial years included in the forward estimates by year, and how are these packages funded? E, what is the breakdown per agency or branch of targeted voluntary separation packages for financial years included in the forward estimates by year by FTEs? Question 9. For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many executive terminations have occurred since 1 July 2020 and what is the value of executive termination payments made? 10. For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what new executive appointments have been made since 1 July 2020 and what is the annual salary and total employment cost for each position? 11. For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many employees have been declared excess? How long has each employee been declared excess? And what is the salary of each excess employee? 12. In the 2020-21 financial year, for all departments and agencies reporting to the Minister, what underspending on operating programs 1 was and 2 was not approved by Cabinet for carryover expenditure in 2021-22? 13, in the 2020-21 financial year for all departments and agencies reporting to the Minister, what underspending on investing or capital projects or programs, 1, was, and 2, was not approved by Cabinet for carryover expenditure in 2021-22? How much was sought and how much was approved? Question 14. For each grant program or fund the Minister is responsible for, please provide the following information for 2020-21, 21-22, 22-23, 23-24 and 24-25 financial years. A, the name of the program or fund. B, the purpose of the program or fund. C, balance of the grant program or fund. D, budgeted or actual expenditure from the program or fund. E, budgeted or actual payments into the program or fund. F, carryovers into or from the program or fund. And G, details including the value and beneficiary of any commitments already made to be funded from the program or fund. 15, for the period of 1 July 2020 to 30 June 2021, provide a breakdown of all grants paid by the department or agency that report to the Minister, including when the payment was made to the recipient and when the grant agreement was signed by both parties. 16, for each year of the forward estimates, please provide the name and budgeted expenditure across the 21-22, 22-23, 23-24 and 24-25 financial years for each individual investing expenditure project administered by or on behalf of all departments and agencies reporting to the Minister. 17, for each year of the forward estimates, please provide the name and budget for each individual program administered by or on behalf of all departments and agencies reporting to the Minister. 18, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what is the total cost of machinery of government changes since 1 July 2020, and please provide a breakdown of these costs. 19, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what new sections of your department or agency have been established since 1 July 2020 and what is their purpose? And lucky last, question number 20 of the omnibus questions, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what savings targets have been set for each year of the forward estimates? What measures are you implementing to meet your savings target? And what is the estimated FTE impact of these measures?
I refer to Budget Paper 1, page 14. Can the Minister how the early years strategy announced in this year's budget will support families in understanding their children's development needs?
Look, I thank the member for Newland for this question, and it really gets to the heart of this significant new investment the government has put into the early years through our early learning strategy, encouraging all children to learn and to thrive. And I am so excited about the work that is now underway as a result of the Marshall Liberal government's investment in our earliest years, in our littlest learners. We recognise the most critical time for a child's health, development and learning is in the first 5 years of their life, and during the 3 years prior to a child entering their formal education system. They experience the most rapid growth in terms of brain development, physical development, language development, social and emotional development, and cognitive development. The government recognises early childhood development is critical in giving every child the best start in life, and high-quality early childhood education can positively contribute to the development of those foundational skills and abilities, ensuring children are ready to learn from the first time they get to school. So the initial 4-year investment of $50.1 million in the early learning strategy will deliver support for child development, parent engagement in learning, responsive local services and increased participation in early childhood settings. A key part of this investment focuses on the expansion of the child development screening system. The proactive monitoring of all children's developmental milestones from birth to school age is absolutely critical to reduce the number of children entering the education system with unidentified disabilities and/or developmental delays. The Child Development Council, led by Anne Glover, has identified an increasing number of developmentally vulnerable children starting school in South Australia as an area of significant concern. Australia has, on average, approximately 22% of children starting school considered developmentally vulnerable. In this state, we are seeing approximately 24%, nearly 1 in 4 South Australian children being considered developmentally vulnerable in at least one or more areas of development. It wasn't always like that. We were down closer to 20% in 2009, but we've seen a steady decline across all socioeconomic quintiles since 2009. It's not a decline that is seen in many other states. I think the ACT is the only other jurisdiction that's going backwards in this area. Other states are improving dramatically. Western Australia and Queensland are now under 20%. Sorry, Western Australia and Victoria are under 20%. Queensland's above us but has been declining sharply in a positive way. Developmental vulnerability does not discriminate. It's spread across all communities. It's spread across all socioeconomic conditions, and early intervention is critical to reduce vulnerability. We know that to improve a family and a child's school experience, to support them to thrive in their learning environment, we need to improve our screening and identification of developmental delays. We know that if we can identify issues early enough, we can positively affect the cognitive and social emotional abilities as well as the overall health of our children. At the moment, every child and every family is offered a universal home visit for their baby from the Child and Family Health Service, from CAFS, soon after birth, with milestone checks offered at 6 to 9 months, 18 to 24 months and at preschool. Unfortunately, many parents are not aware of or do not take the opportunity to utilise these checks. Fewer than 1 in 3 take the second and third, and about half at the preschool level. Under this new initiative, in partnership with CAFS and other non-government providers, we'll be increasing the reach of screening and enhancing its effectiveness. The schedule will also be widened to include additional checks at 12 months and 3 years. Increased monitoring of children's developmental milestones from birth to school age will reduce undiagnosed developmental delays in children entering the education system. And early identification of any issues will help ensure that appropriate early interventions can be put in place, whether that means giving parents a helping hand to address a potential vulnerability before it becomes an issue, helping parents find the nearest playgroup to help them develop some of their skills. Something as low level as that can make a big difference, or it could be a more significant intervention for a health or a disability issue. In any of those cases, we know that early intervention can make an enormous difference to outcomes for individuals. I think it'll be an enormous impact on outcomes for young individuals, our littlest learners across South Australia.
Very good. Given that time has expired for examination of payments in regards to the portfolios of early years and child development, there are no further questions. I declare the examination of the proposed payments for the portfolio early years and childhood development completed. Member for Newland.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the sitting of the committee be suspended until 3 p.m.
Is that seconded? All those in favour say aye. Against say no. That is carried. The committee stands suspended until 3 p.m. today.